if you want to speak up, there can feel like there's such a challenge. How do I do it? What are the words that I say? Let me give you two phrases that tend to help. One is from where I sit. From where I sit allows you to speak from your perspective, your lived experience. It is an acknowledgement that your own view is legitimate but limited, just as your boss's, your colleague, your spouse's views are also legitimate but limited. So if you're wondering about how to start and you're worried about the rebuttal, you're worried about them saying, well, that's not true, that's not my experience, start with from where I sit. From where I sit, that deadline doesn't seem possible. From where I sit, we're missing key information. It might look different from where they sit, but at least you can own it from your perspective. If you're in a conversation and you disagree with what someone else is saying, another useful phrase, another go-to is, I see it differently. Different doesn't mean wrong or bad. Different isn't about blame. Different is just different. So if you're looking for a way to inject yourself into a conversation to express a difference of opinion, try using I see it differently. People often ask me, what are the words specifically? How do I show up? How do I speak up? I wish I could give you a script, but if I were, it wouldn't work for your context. You shouldn't sound like me. You shouldn't sound like your boss. You should sound like you. So instead, I offer four anchors, anchors that give us something to grasp onto, that moor us when the waves of overwhelm or confusion or unscripted reactions come into play. The first anchor is start with why. If you're going to speak up, you're doing it for some reason. Is it because you're not okay with injustice? Is it because the policy needs to change? Is it because you care enough about the other person that you're willing to say something? Is it because you want things to be better for you, for your team, for your kids? Whatever it is, what is your bigger why? Behavioral change research says if there is a bigger why, then it allows us to hold on to that purpose when the discomfort inevitably creeps in. Second is connect the dots. As much as we might hope that people would think exactly the way that we think and have the exact same information as us, that's just not realistic. So connecting the dots is to say, from where I sit, this is what I see. This is the data I have. This is how I'm thinking about it, which leads me to this conclusion. What do you think? How do you see it differently? Connecting the dots gives us rigor to figure out how we're each thinking about things and where the disconnects are. Third, make the ask clear. Most of us want to show up well for each other. Most of us want to be responsive to each other, but frankly, we just don't know how. If you're speaking up, what are you asking of the other person? Are you asking them to be a sounding board? Are you just wanting to vent? Are you wanting them to problem solve? If you can name the ask that you have for them, it increases the likelihood they can be responsive to you in a way that actually helps you. Fourth, embrace resistance. We might wish that if we were to speak up, people would just accept us and change would happen. And yet, reality is that that doesn't usually happen. We get thrown off when defensiveness or resistance show up. Resistance is a natural part of the process. And in fact, resistance is engagement. So the question for us when resistance shows up is to not be discouraged or deterred from trying to move forward in a way that we might want, but to ask and embrace the resistance. Ask, what concerns do you have? What would need to change for you to get to yes? In embracing resistance, we get more information to figure out a way forward.